Thank you very much. Okay, members, notice of motion, and I will call upon Councillor Houghton to move.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very honoured to bring forward this motion to commend the dedication and tireless efforts of Sister Claire Crockett's sisters Shauna and Megan and her many friends in promoting awareness of her life and legacy. Regardless of one's personal beliefs, it is undeniable that their work has brought significant positive attention to our city. Sister Claire's family have worked diligently to share Sister Claire's story, highlighting her values of compassion, dedication and service. Their efforts have resulted in widespread recognition, drawing interest from people both locally and internationally. The attention generated by Sister Claire's story has brought pride to our community, showcasing the strength of character and generosity of spirit that define our people here. Her story has inspired many, particularly young people, reinforcing the message that one person's life can have a meaningful and lasting impact. The city has seen increased engagement from visitors and media, highlighting our rich heritage and strong community values. So this motion is not just about recognising an individual, but also celebrating the hard work of a family who has ensured that a local story has reached a global audience. We commend their dedication and acknowledge the positive attention it has brought to our city. I would be very grateful for supporting this motion as a mark of respect for the family's effort and the goodwill that they have fostered. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Houghton. Councillor Donnelly.
Chair. As a person who doesn't have much faith religious-wise, I wholeheartedly support this motion because it is very important to those who do have faith. And what Councillor Houghton has outlined there, you can see that. You can see the sort of excitement, the pride, the buzz. And so just to put on record that, you know, I support the motion and wish them well in the little endeavours. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. And on a similar vein to Councillor Donnelly, obviously to support on behalf of my colleagues. Councillor Houghton, you bringing this motion to us today, I thank you for that as well. I don't think Sister Claire needs any introduction to anybody in this city, and actually her name is venerated right throughout the globe now, and rightly so, because she's a shining example of all that's good in a human being, someone who was selfless and giving and thoughtful and loving, and sure, why wouldn't we support the work of our sisters and our family and their continued quest to have Claire's name known and venerated, actually, across the globe. We can be rightly proud of Sister Claire. I know members of her family. I knew her late father quite well. I'm sure you probably did too. They're from our neighbourhood, as they say. And of course, Sister Claire does, as you know, and many will originate in what we know as the Moore DEA. I think we should all be proud of Claire, Sister Claire. And of course, she died doing the thing that she loved, and that was caring for and loving other people. So I totally share everything. In fact, actually, I was walking down here. And I was thinking about, you know, the many doors that you might knock. And I know that many will know what I'm talking about when I say this. When we're out doing the things that we do, and you'll knock on doors, and you will see little portraits in windows or on the doors of Sister Claire. That's the kind of respect and regard that people in our neighbourhoods have for her and all that she means to us. As a city and as a people, and indeed even on a personal level, my dad lives in the neighbourhood too, and he's got a little picture of Sister Claire up on his wall. So anytime I'm in the house, and pretty much every day now these days, there she is on the wall. So you don't forget her. She's everywhere, and that's kind of what it's all about. So thank you. Catherine, thank you very much. Really appreciate bringing that motion to us. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councillor Boyle. Alderman McMorris.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in, and thank you to Aisling for bringing this forward. I personally don't believe in sainthoods. However, I do believe and I commend somebody that dedicates their life to the work of God, and she has to be commended for that. I didn't know that much about her, to be fair, but whenever the motion came forward, I went in and done a wee bit of research on her. She sounds like somebody that I would really have loved to have met and known. She sounds a real character. So I just want to say that basically, as much as I don't believe in the sainthoods, I really, really wish the family well in their quest in order to get this recognition for Sister Claire, and we wish them well. It's not often we get to talk about things like that. Do you know what I mean? And it's made me kind of realise about the work that goes on within our world. Do you know what I mean? In order to get the word of God out there, and I think that's important, and it's an important message. And she has to be admired for the courageous work that she done. And I wish her family well on their quest. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, look, you can tell by the number of photos that you see of Sister Claire around the city that a lot of people hold her in very high esteem and are very inspired by her life and her contribution. And, you know, I didn't know Sister Claire, but she sounds like she was an amazing person and did amazing work. And that's why so many people love her right across the city. So I wish the family and others well in the effort to kind of like celebrate her legacy and to promote her legacy. I think that I've no problem with the council doing that. I don't think that the council should be involved in promoting sainthood. I think that there is, you know, there's lots of people who don't believe in sainthood. There's lots of people in our city who are not Catholic. There's many different faiths celebrated here. And there, you know, there's a discussion about the Catholic Church and its processes, which I see as something that I would think is separate from what the council should be doing. But look, like others have said, I wish the family well, and I think that it's good that people know about the good work of Sister Claire. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Members, I do not sense any. Oh, Alderman Guy.
Thank you, Mayor. And on behalf of the Ulster Unionist Party, I'd just like to say that we fully support this motion. Again, I don't know much about sainthoods. I know there was an exhibition on in St. Eugene's Cathedral, I think it was, not so long ago, which I missed. I didn't get to, but actually I went, like they've went to see it just to sort of understand it more, because of the buzz that was around the city about Sister Claire getting her knighthood. A lot of my friends may not be religious, but their parents are, and I know how much joy it has brought to their parents the past few weeks when the process was taking place. So happy to support this, and definitely deserved for all the hard work that she has carried out through her life. So happy to support.
Thank you, Alderman Guy. I do not see anybody else who wants to speak on this issue, so you want to sum up?
Thank you, everybody, for your support in the motion. And John, I did know Doc and Margaret very well, and it's just a pity that they're not here to see the stuff that's unfolding at the minute. Obviously, they were heartbroken by the death of Claire, but Shauna and Megan are definitely just ploying on there and doing their mother and father and Claire proud. She was from the Brandywell. I did know her well. I grew up in streets away from Claire, and they say she was a character would be an understatement. And whenever she joined the sisterhood, none of us could believe it. We actually didn't believe it that she came back and visited in her full regalia. But I think that the reason for this motion is because I have been seeing how this cause is bringing people together. I have been going to events where I have seen people sitting in seats that haven't left their home maybe in a couple of years. And it just made me feel so proud that something like this could actually bring people together. And that is why I wanted to bring the motion, because our council are a huge part of our city and district here. And it's important that it is acknowledged the efforts that are going into the Sister Clare's cause. But I thank everybody for their support. And I wish Shauna and Megan, on behalf of our party, the very best of luck going forward. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, members. Members, there are no... You're abstaining? Okay. Is there anybody else who is abstaining? Anyone voting against it online? Okay. So I would assume the motion has passed. Well done. Well done. Okay, moving on. Councillor Bog to move.
Mayor, and I will take the motion as read. Let it halt.
A second of this? Thank you. Go
Thank you,
ahead,
Mayor.
Councillor Bog.
Avira, and the motion is pretty self-explanatory, but I suppose people will recognise that there can be people in our rural communities, or farmers and our rural dwellers that are particularly hard to reach. And in discussions with Macmillan and the Farming Community Network, and in preparation for bringing forward this motion, it's been highlighted that people in rural areas are also more often at an advanced cancer diagnosis stage when they get their diagnosis, and that then has an impact that 5% are less likely to survive a cancer diagnosis. And often farmers themselves won't get checked until the very last minute, and at times, unfortunately, when it is too late. And I know particularly councillors in the chamber who represent rural DAs within our council area will know that people can be hard to reach for a variety of reasons. And the message that from this campaign with Macmillan and with the Farming Community Network is that no one is too hard to reach. We just need to find different ways of reaching them. And that was the main reason for bringing forward this motion, that council does all it can to ensure that we are getting the message out and around symptoms of cancer, and also the services that are then available for farmers and for rural dwellers in particular, to make sure that they go and get checked and benefit of the services that are there. So I think it's important that we do our part to make people aware of symptoms that can sometimes be overlooked. Things like a persistent cough, going to the toilet more often, breathlessness and changes in skin colour, or in the likes of moles or freckles, and that they can be sometimes overlooked, but they can be very clear signs that there is something wrong. So I'll finish off, Mayor, and that I think it's important again that we do all that we do and that we can do in order to raise awareness of this. And I ask councillors for their support in the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Bog. Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to Councillor Boggs for tabling the motion. On behalf of the SDLP, we just want to record our support for it. We know, and I did take the time to go and check out the campaign on Macmillan's website, and Councillor Boggs has outlined how farmers often overlook some of the cancer symptoms because they put it down to the farming profession itself. So aches and pains, and things that would normally get picked up by a person who doesn't earn their living through the farming industry can often lead to a diagnosis being slow, and all too often, unfortunately, it can lead to more serious outcomes than would have been the case had it been picked up earlier. So I think that's a good reason for this campaign. Macmillan is a charity close to my heart. They were my chosen charity when I was mayor, and I know the great work that they do across all of the community. And it is right that we do have a focus on the rural communities, because there is a degree of evidence showing how people from rural areas face health inequalities in comparison to those who live in urban areas. Simple things like getting appointments with GPs are often easier for people who live in urban areas than they are for people who are from rural areas, and especially for people who live and earn their livelihood from farming, because the hours of a GP surgery often conflict with the work that needs to be done on the farm. So for all of those reasons, the SDLP are happy to support the motion, and thanks again to Councillor Boggs for raising it here this afternoon. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Alderman Middleton, please.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in. On behalf of the DUP and as a very proud rural councillor for the Fáin, I really, really welcome this motion as brought forward today. I have to say, listening to Councillor Riley just now, I actually got quite emotional having lost a male relative to symptoms that unfortunately were overlooked due to very, very hard work. So I really resonate with your points. I really welcome this motion today because many of my constituents hail from hard-working farming families or work alongside farmers, tending to their land, their produce and their animals. I have spoken in this chamber before of the 365-day schedules our farmers work per year and clearly outlined the long and arduous hours that our farming communities are dedicating to their livelihood, which is a livelihood that we all benefit from. I won't take time personally naming or recalling the many, many stories that I know of, but I will affirm that our farmers and farm workers, particularly the male workers, suffer more with their mental health and more with their physical health due to those arduous hours that I've referenced that they put into their work, due to the fact that they can't always access GP opening hours and they don't have time in the morning to sit and wait for an appointment, trying to get through on the line. And that is not me having a dig at our GP surgeries either, because that's a separate issue. And I know that certainly in the rural, our GP surgeries are working very, very hard. So in the Fáin and across the district, our rural residents, and particularly our farming residents, are facing rural isolation. And therefore, I fully endorse the Macmillan campaign and ask Council to put every effort into getting the message out to our farmers, to our farming families and our farm workers to support Macmillan's pilot project and to liaise with our rural partners. On a final note, whilst I fully agree with everything in this motion, I want to highlight that there is a pandemic of men's health issues right across the rural. And whilst I agree that our farmers and our farming communities and workers are more than often the most hard hit, this issue also affects all our male rural dwellers significantly. I hope that this chamber can unite, as we have sadly failed to do so before, for and showing support for our farmers and farming communities. I hope that today we can show that we really truly care about their well-being and their livelihood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Guy.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in, and fully support the Ulster Unionist Party, fully support Councillor Boggs' motion here. Today, I've had a conversation with a friend of mine at a bump Dundee, and we were just passing comment about how many people who have passed away that we know since early December. A lot of them who had cancer. Totally agree with this motion. It is a big problem in rural areas, and I fully support the campaign that's trying to raise awareness. Personally, I have a family member who's terminal from cancer at the minute, so I know the good work that Macmillan do. However, I'm not going to add or amend this here motion because I think that the conversation that I had with a person today was the amount of people that we know, males who have went to their GP with conditions that may be representative of cancer and found out that the diagnosis was actually too late. And it's not just a rural thing, it's an urban thing. And it's basically men need to go to their GPs more with the slightest wee thing that they may think, and not keep putting it off and saying things like, you know what, I'll be grand, it's nothing major. Because when they go to the GP and they get the diagnosis, it's irreversible. So I'm not going to add anything to this because I know that, but because it's a great motion, but it's urban and rural, and it's a major problem. Maybe we have to look at advertising campaigns just for men in general, for getting that message out and getting them to be more cancer aware. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Guy. Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Boggs, for bringing the motion, and people before profit absolutely support it. I think that no matter where you live, whether you're living in a rural area or an urban area, everyone has an absolute right to access healthcare, particularly access to cancer services. And it is tragic that so many people are dying because of the lack of access, particularly in rural areas. And there's a few things to say about this. Increasingly now, access to cancer services is about wealth. The better off you are, the more likely it is that you're going to have access to private healthcare. There's growing numbers of people that are turning to private healthcare, and the crisis in our health service means that there's less access to GPs, and it's more difficult to access healthcare in general. But in rural areas, it is more difficult because if you don't have a car, there's not necessarily public transport that can get you to a GP or to a hospital. It's more difficult for people to travel. So this is a big issue. And while I 100% agree, it's a massive issue in urban areas. There's particular things that are happening in our rural areas because of remoteness, because of the lack of public transport, because of the centralisation of health services, particularly GP services, and other things that make it more difficult for people in rural areas. So I think this is why it's important that we're actually highlighting this motion. And, I'm glad Councillor Boggs brought it in, because we should do what we can to highlight it, spotlight it, and make sure try to make sure something is done about it.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Members, I do not see anybody else indicating to speak. So Councillor Boggs, do you want to sum up?
Good Mayor, and thank you very much to all the councillors who have spoken in favour of the motion. And just to comment on a couple of points that have been made, I absolutely agree that this is a broader issue than just the rural. I suppose the comments in relation to just the focus on that these people are harder to reach than others is the main reason for bringing the motion forward. But I think we need to look at the good steps that have been made, particularly in relation to cancer services. When we look even locally here in the Northwest, at the Northwest Cancer Centre, and how particularly people in rural Donegal have been able to access cancer services much more efficiently than before, and that is the same for everybody across this district area within our own council. And I completely agree with the remarks of Alderman Middleton in relation to the issues faced our farming community. It's not long ago that a special meeting of council was brought forward in relation to the introduction of measures on the inheritance tax from the British government, and that, coupled with ever reduced funding for farmers and farming communities, makes farming much more difficult. And in turn, then, as Julie says, farmers can't just take time off to do the things that the rest of us sometimes take for granted. So I just want to make that point and show our rural communities and our farmers that we are thinking about them, and that we'll do all that we can to support them. And finally, Mayor, just to commend the staff that are involved in this pilot. I know they're working really, really hard to try and get as much information out as possible. I know that the McMullen and the Farming Community Network pilot will be in my own DA and in Glenmornan in the coming weeks, to offer information to that community, and they're trying their best to get around other communities. So I just want to thank councillors for their support today, and look forward to seeing the work the council will do in relation to this.
Thank you, Councillor Boggs. Okay, I do not hear any dissenting voices, so could I assume it is unanimous? Thank you, members. Well done, Councillor. Moving on, Alderman Guy to move.
Happy to second.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll take the motion as read there. Thank you, Mayor. On the 7th of May 1945, the German High Command signed documents with conditions of surrender. On the 8th of May, these conditions came into effect. Known as VE Day, it marked the official end to World War II in Europe. Not surprisingly, there were massive celebrations erupted across all Allied nations, with massive public gatherings and street parties. This year will mark the 80th anniversary of VE Day, which will be commemorated with various events and activities. All communities are encouraged to come together to celebrate peace. Lighting of beacons are scheduled for the evening of May the 8th, as well as the ringing of church bells. Street parties and community gatherings are just some of the planned events to commemorate the 80th anniversary. A week later, on the 15th of May, will be the 80th anniversary of the German U-boat surrender at Lissahalli. The event was part of Operation Deadlight, a combined operation by the Royal Navy, Royal Canadian Navy and the US Navy to dispose of German submarine fleet. Council, in collaboration with Foyle Port, have erected information boards near the site of the U-boat surrender, and Enoch Youth Forum have been learning about presenting a project on the events of 80 years ago. On the 14th of May 1945, 8 German U-boats sailed into Lough Foyle and surrendered to Admiral Sir Max Horton at a jetty at Lissahalli. The U-boats had posed a significant threat to the outcome of World War II. Their relentless attacks on Allied shipping convoys travelling from North America to mainly the UK during the Battle of the Atlantic saw more than 3,500 merchant navy ships and 175 warships destroyed, and more than 72,000 sailors lost their lives. The Germans lost 783 U-boats and around 30,000 sailors. Much of the North Atlantic convoy were stationed in the city at the time. It was said that there was that many battleships in the River Foyle that you could have walked across the decks from the waterside to the city side. The Battle of Atlantic became the longest battle of World War II, lasting almost 6 years. The German U-boats were a thorn in the Allied side, and it was things such as breaking the Enigma code, better radar systems, long-range aircraft, and improved sound detection technology that eventually brought about the surrender at Lissahalli. All U-boats were eventually scuttled off the coast to prevent further usage. I have requested that a paper be brought to the appropriate committee to discuss the possibility of funding local commemorations within the city and district by schools, community groups and others who may want to hold events or research connections to the city during these 80th anniversary commemorations. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Guy. Councillor Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks to Alderman Guy for the proposal. I don't think anybody could argue against the fact that the end of World War II in Europe was a significant event, and the surrender of the German U-boat fleet on our doorstep was not a significant event either. This is asking for funding to commemorate. I would think from a council perspective, the sort of natural funding avenue would be cultural grant aid. That process opened in October, it closed in December. The results were communicated to the Business and Culture Committee this month. But given that we are content for a paper to come forward to B&C, if that's the natural home for it, to look at possible external funding opportunities, but we don't think they exist within the current rates budget. And if we were to consider this outside it, it would be going against our agreed process for cultural events and festivals. But happy to support a paper looking at external options coming to B&C. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Yunanis online.
Vera for letting me in. I just want to say on behalf of Sinn Féin that we're happy to support this motion brought forward by Alderman Guy today, and we look forward to seeing the paper coming back into the relevant committee.
Thank you. Alderman Cook.
Thanks, Mayor, for letting me in, and thanks to Alderman Guy for bringing this motion forward. Myself and my party colleagues in the DUP are happy to also support this motion. Commemorating VE Day and the surrender of Lissahalli of the German U-boat fleet is part of our history, and providing funding to community, schools or organisations, whichever it may be, we think is a great idea. It could be a fun educational piece for youngsters or anyone to learn about our local history. So I look forward to seeing the paper coming back, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Cook. And Councillor Donnelly.
Chair, no problem with people celebrating or commemorating or remembering history, but I think it has to be done in an honest and a reflective way. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of that happens these days, that there is the narrative changes, it's revisionism. 27 million Russians died in that conflict, and that has been because of the events, current events. It's almost forgotten or written out. I don't want something to be a propaganda exercise for imperialism, as in US or British, because this was a tragic event that millions upon millions of people lost their lives. It was the war to end wars, which didn't happen. As we see right throughout the globe today, there's more wars taking place than ever before. So I think that if we, I think we're going to educate children, then we have to take the so-called glory and out of conflict and deal with the reality and the facts of the dangers of war and what the misery and suffering that it brings. As I say, no problem commemorating, but it needs to be done in an honest and reflective way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. And Alderman Jose online.
My colleague Alderman Guy
Alderman
for bringing
Jose, we
this motion.
cannot hear you. Closer to your mic.
Yeah, is that better?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to thank Alderman Guy for bringing the motion to us. It's quite personal to myself, particularly the surrender of the U-boat fleet, as my late father would have served in the Royal Navy on corvettes in convoy protection during the Battle of the Atlantic, as well as having served in the Adriatic. I think Councillor Donnelly is quite right to mention the Eastern Front, where actually the bulk of the fighting in World War II occurred and the bulk of deaths. We have just commemorated the liberation of Auschwitz, and I suppose it's only right that we should commemorate the end of the war in Europe and the surrender of the U-boat fleet. But at the same time, remember, this was not the end of World War II because the Far East campaign was still ongoing, and the Japanese surrender occurred much later on, and there's a lot of controversy around the rationale that occurred on. But the connection of the port of Lissahalli and indeed the city with the whole of that Atlantic campaign has to be commemorated, and I welcome that a paper will come through that Council can examine and see how our local community can be supported, and hopefully Council itself can be involved in commemorating the end of the campaign in Europe, and particularly the U-boat fleet surrender. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. Okay, members, I don't see anybody. Oh, Councillor Harkin.
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in. Yeah, look, I agree. I think that the end of the Second World War and the sinking of German U-boats, down a bit from here at Lissahalli are very significant events, and we should make sure that people are educated in them and know as much about it as possible. They were very, because, the better you understand history, you don't repeat history, or you don't repeat the mistakes of the past. And now is not really the time, I suppose, for a discussion about the interpretation of history, but I do think that that's important. And I have no problem supporting this motion, but I don't think that, and I think it's important that the commemorations aren't used as a means to glorify the United States military or the British military. We've just commemorated and discussed the 53rd anniversary of Bloody Sunday here, and we know that both the British state and the American state are centrally involved right now in a genocidal slaughter in Gaza. And so I think that what is taught and what is commemorated in terms of the content will be very, very important, but absolutely no problem supporting the paper. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Members, I do not see anybody else indicating to speak, so Alderman Guy, sum up.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks to all the members for their comments. It's all taken on board. Thank you very much. I will say that just on Councillor Donnelly, all the points were taken there, and I do agree about the exceptional, unwarranted loss of life in all wars. However, it was the First World War that was actually the war to end all wars. But sadly, that wasn't listened to. And since then, we've had wars everywhere, all over the Second World War, and much recently, the violence out in the Middle East and so on as well, out around there. So war is futile, as we all know. And we hope that people will learn eventually as they go along. But it seems to be as long as there's money to be made from war, that they'll still be fighting one another. So thank you, Mayor, for that there.
Thank you, Alderman Guy. Members, I think this is also unanimous. No dissenting voices. Thank you very much. Moving on, well done. Moving on, Councillor Duffy to move.
Thank you. I'll take it as read and just look for a seconder. Thank you. Okay, public services have been consistently damaged by British government's cuts, and over a decade of austerity has left our health and social care system under severe stress. Unprecedented staff shortages are leaving GP surgeries, emergency departments, hospitals and other services such as care in the community unable to meet the needs of patients across the north. Nowhere is that more evident than in Nottingham's accident and emergency department, which has been experiencing severe pressure for a number of years. The situation there is becoming increasingly untenable for staff and patients alike, so it is crucial that the Health Minister now prioritise a new fit-for-purpose emergency department for the hospital. Our constituency offices are dealing with unprecedented numbers of health issues, with people struggling with accessing GPs and dentists, sick people in extreme pain on waiting lists for surgery, worried individuals and families waiting to see consultants, and winter pressures making all of these issues much, much worse. In fact, this winter we have a new term added to our vocabulary, corridor care, not a term any of us want to hear. Addressing these pressures requires a coordinated response involving the department, trusts and community organisations to ensure that emergency services remain effective during the challenging winter months and beyond. This involves expanding access to primary care and community health services to manage non-emergency cases outside ED. But in Altnagelvin, these pressures are faced all year round. There is a clear and demonstrable need for a new fit-for-purpose emergency department. We hear every day the impact this is having on individuals, those in mental health crisis, children, older people, people with chronic conditions, people with dementia, and people with very complex needs. We have spoken directly with individuals who have been affected, those in extreme despair or distress who have no separate facility. They often feel the stigma of sitting in A&E with police, afraid of knowing someone and the judgment that comes with this. The lack of consultation rooms also means a lack of privacy to deliver news to families of a loved one or to inform patients of terminal and life-changing illnesses. And unfortunately, this was the experience for many people. Dozens of older patients have contacted us, telling us that they feel scared and are waiting up to 20 hours in chairs before admission, witnessing many other patients who are vulnerable and experiencing mental health crisis or are under the influence of substances. There is one toilet in the waiting room, one toilet between upwards of 100 sick people, one toilet for people suffering from Crohn's, kidney stones and many other issues, one toilet in which there have been multiple reports of drug taking, one toilet for clinically unwell patients to use. Where is the infection control, the dignity and the safety for patients? We have also spoken to ambulance staff who are tied up with waiting times of up to 16 hours outside A&E. In fact, all the staff that we have spoken to have talked about the feeling of being burnt out and are experiencing extremely low morale. This is, and they've mentioned both assaults, both verbal and physical, and unfortunately this is all contributing to the inability to retain good staff. We welcome that the business case for a new ED department has been passed, and this shows that the need has already been demonstrated, and what we need to do now is to ensure that that is prioritised by the Health Minister and delivered for Derry and the North West as soon as possible. And I ask that people support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Members, anyone? Alderman McMorris?
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in, and thanks to Sandra for bringing this motion forward. Anybody that visits ED department in Galvin would concur with all of the comments that Sandra has just made. The working conditions that the staff are faced with in the emergency department is just shocking. And she stayed right about the toilets and the dignity of patients. We see patients being administered with medical intervention on corridors and everywhere. And I have to say, this is definitely not a staff issue. This is an issue where the trust needs to address it, and certainly the health minister needs to step up. But I do believe the emergency department, the new emergency department, won't fix all of the issues within the health service that we're seeing at the minute. We have people bed blocking because they can't get beds in wards. And then we can't get people out of the wards because we don't have the domiciliary care to provide for them at home. And we also have a report, a report on regarding the health reforms that's been sitting on a shelf for a long time, which needs to be brought out and dusted off and addressed. There needs to be widespread health reform within our health service, and it needs to be done urgently because people are losing their lives because of like waiting lists and whatnot. So happy to support the motion on behalf of the DUP, and it's probably one of the most prevalent issues that we deal with on a daily basis is health issues, waiting list, and just getting access. Thanks, Mayor, and thanks to Sandra for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Alderman McMorris. Sorry for that interruption. Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Duffy, for bringing the motion. We in the SLP are more than happy to support it. I suppose just a few points, and it's all kind of already been said. The point about the toilets, I mean, that's just ridiculous, isn't it? You know, if you go over, if you even think, right, there's something wrong, I need to go over to A&E, the last thing, you do everything you can to avoid going, because you know you're going to have to sit and wait, you know about the privacy and the dignity. And I know that since the minor injuries opened, it has relieved a wee bit, but if you were to go over there, you wouldn't see it. Do you know? And over the past 6 months, I've had to go to minor injuries twice for myself and for my son, and it's a brilliant process. You book in, you get your X-ray, you get your whatever your treatment, and you're out again within an hour. And it's a really good kind of system that they have in place, and it has definitely improved things. But if you go in through the ED, you'll see that it doesn't feel like there's an improvement. So I can't imagine how bad it would be if we didn't have that system in place as well. I think that the corridor care, I mean, that's terrifying to think that it's acceptable. It's becoming acceptable that we would have people being treated in the corridor, and that this is okay, because it's becoming normalised that this is okay, and it's not okay in our health system. I think that given that Derry and Strabane have some of the worst health outcomes, and when you link that up then, so people, men especially in our most deprived areas of our district, are going to live 7 years less than the average across Northern Ireland. So there needs to be a focus, and it's about that regional balance again. Why, when our health outcomes are so low, why do we have the oldest ED in the region? It just doesn't make sense. I welcome the fact that the health minister has been down and has said there is a need for a new emergency department. But from what I was doing about a reading, it's minimum 5 years. So how many people are going to die in those 5 years? I agree with what Alderman McMorris has just said, that sometimes I see in the news and I see politicians from right across the political spectrum calling out ED, it's terrible, look how many people are waiting, and so you feel really sorry, and I know they're not blaming the staff, but you feel really sorry for the staff, because I know it's a really well managed department. I have really good friends who work there, right from porters right up into senior management within the acute sector, and you just think that they're kind of getting that abuse all the time, and it's not their fault. It really has to do with patient flow. I worked in the trust for 15 years, both in community and the acute sector, and it's across the board, physical and mental health. The investment, we need a new ED department, but we also need investment in community care. So I think that's all. I really just wanted to point out that kind of regional balance piece. But I'm happy to support the motion on behalf of the SDLP, and thank you to Councillor Duffy for bringing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDade. Councillor Harkin?
Thank you, Mayor, for letting me in, and thank you, Councillor Duffy, for bringing the motion, because I think any opportunity to put a spotlight on the crisis in our health service is welcome, and I think that the situation with A&E is unacceptable, and I think that there's been a long campaign for a new emergency department in Altnagalvin, and I think the mover of the motion and others have outlined why we need it in terms of the number of people that are moving through it and health inequalities here in our district. So I find it completely unacceptable that the health minister put this on the long finger, comes down and talks to some people, does a photo op, and then says it's 5 years before we're going to be able to take any action. And as we know, he might not be the health minister when we, in 5 years from now. So I don't think that approach is acceptable. It's also the case, to my mind, I read and I hear Michelle O'Neill, the First Minister, saying that Stormont is very good on delivery. Its record on delivery is very good. It isn't. And this is just another example where Stormont has absolutely failed because our health service is in absolute shambles and is in crisis, and the people that are feeling the burden of that are workers and people who depend on the care. So I want to support the motion, but I would like to propose that where it says Council calls on the Health Minister, that we add and Stormont Executive to prioritise a new fit-for-purpose emergency department. And the reason why that's important is because we can send a letter from our council to the Health Minister, but this actually needs to be a discussion at the Stormont Executive table. And we have government parties represented in here who don't actually need a motion from this council to make this case to their Stormont colleagues. So I think that's why it should be added. These issues of regional disparity are not about one minister or one department. It's about the Stormont Executive being held to account on regional disparity and held to account on the state of our health service. So I think I want to propose that we add and Stormont Executive to that, Mayor. Thank you.
Second for that. Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. Thank you, Councillor Harkin. Councillor Donnelly.
Parliamentary Chair, I'd like to thank Councillor Duffy for bringing that up, and also just to go back to the previous motions, the proposers of the motions, I'd like to thank them. When I spoke, I forgot to do that. There's not a lot that hasn't already been said. The system's broke. The system is badly broke for the people that use it. But it's being designed that way. It's being deliberately run down. We're becoming more Americanized, the system of healthcare. And that's easy to see when you try to get an appointment. If you have money, you'll get sorted, as Councillor Harkin pointed out earlier. But you try to get a doctor's appointment, very, very difficult. A lot of people just forget about it. I have personally witnessed pensioners lying on the ground, waiting in the rain for hours, waiting on an ambulance. And a lot of people will not go to the emergency department for a number of reasons, for the queues, for the scenes that they find there. It's almost like a field hospital at times that people being treated in corridors. There's reports of people dying alone on a chair, and all this gets back to people, and there's just some people who have given up and they won't use that system. You could have somebody who's on the spectrum and going into that situation, and it just adds, and it's, in my opinion, very, very deliberate. There won't be a person in this chamber who would not have heard of some type of incident that I have just outlined. So people have to say why. We can see it. The staff are suffering. There's staff who get up to go to work and they just don't want to do it because of what they're going into. And they're in there and under very difficult circumstances, and there's pay disparity and all of that. And a lot of them are going elsewhere to get, you know, better employment conditions and better pay. We all know this is happening. But there doesn't seem to be the will to fix it. And we go back to some of the previous comments, particularly Alderman Guy, about money and wars. There's always money. There's billions of pounds for wars. They destroy human life and destruction, but we can't find money to look after our elderly or you know, the sick. So everybody out there knows it's happened, but there doesn't seem to be a will to tackle it. But thanks, Councillor Duffy, for allowing us the opportunity to discuss this. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Members, we have a small amendment. Are you all happy? Alderman Guy, speak to, okay, come ahead. No? Two. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, Mayor, I'm happy enough to speak with the amendment if I'm allowed to. It doesn't matter. But just to thank Councillor Duffy for bringing this motion to the chamber here. To be honest, I can't disagree with anything that she says. I think that everyone in this room or has family members who have experienced the emergency department at Altony Galvin, the long waits, the long waits and chairs, the toilet, completely spot on about it. Like, it's an absolute disgrace in this day and age that there's only one toilet, which is always blocked whenever people are on it. You know, the health minister visited all emergency departments around Northern Ireland recently, at the start of December. And he did speak about how Altony Galvin was obviously the oldest emergency department. And realistically, he was putting a time frame on it because it all comes down to money of at least 5 years. Now, we know that's not good enough because it's bad enough another 5 months of this here that people are going and having to sit 4 days and waiting to be seen to. But there's obviously a knock-on effect as well, that its care packages aren't available. So it's blocking up beds. People can't get in from casualty into the beds, and it's a whole knock-on effect. The GP system is seriously broken here. You can't get an appointment with your GP. You basically, to me, the GPs worked harder before lockdown. Now they think it's all right to see less people after lockdown, but yet they'll tell you they're working flat out, although they take 15 minutes in between each patient now to write up a report, which was never the case before. Obviously, when Mike Nesbitt was down here, he did speak with a lot of the patients that were sitting waiting in the emergency department, and he's quoted as saying, it's not only your name and address that you give over when you can walk into the emergency department, it's you surrender your dignity as well, because you're left sitting in a hallway, you're left sitting for hours. Now, the staff are absolutely brilliant, but their morale is at an all-time low. So we need to recruit more staff as well. We need a better emergency department. We need better healthcare packages to release patients from hospital, to care for them at home. And we need just a better process. But totally agree. And I'll go back to what I said before and what Councillor Donnelly says. Quite easy to spend money on other things that destroy lives rather than repairing them. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Guy. Alderman Jose online.
Thank you, Mayor. I hope you can hear me. And thank you to Sandra for the motion, and indeed, thanks to Councillor Harkin for the amendment. I'm sure, there was a time when Altony Galvin was the new hospital in the system, and I remember Altony Galvin being opened. And it's now at the other end of that system, perhaps one could argue at end of life with its current usage. Mention has been made there of the social care system and the need for throughput of patients. The 5-year capital expenditure process that will be needed for the creation of a new ED department, that will be tied up, as we well know in council, with procurement issues and a whole pile of other issues. But in the meantime, I think the issue also has to be addressed on the issue of throughput of patients, to allow patients, when they're seen in ED, to have the dignity of moving on to a bed in a ward. So that is something that can be perhaps actioned at a faster speed than the capital development of the new hospital or the new department. This issue hasn't come just out of the blue. I well remember Michael McGimpsey claiming that health needed more funding. And I think every health minister since him has realised that and appealed to their colleagues within the executive, which is why I welcome the amendment from Councillor Harkin. This is not just a health issue, it's an executive issue. All of the parties, as we know, prior to the election to the Assembly, agreed that health was their priority. So let's see it being a priority as we move forward. It's not just an issue for Altmegalvin. I have found myself quite recently in Enniskillen in the Southwest Acute Hospital, and I found myself for over 50 hours waiting in ED. As somebody has said in the chair, eventually I was on a trolley in a corridor, and I never ended up in a bed in a ward. I actually was at an entrance to a ward. So it's the whole issue of the throughput that needs to be addressed in the short term, and in the long term, that capital issue to be addressed, but that needs entire executive commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Okay, Councillor Mooney.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment on a discrete issue. I have no problem in the motion, but just to take an issue with Councillor Alderman Guy said, should declare an interest. My wife is a local GP, but certainly the description that he provided to the committee today, or the chamber, certainly doesn't accord with what my wife does on a daily basis anyway. I know she leaves about 8:15 in the morning. I don't see her about 7 o'clock at night in between. I don't think she leaves that building that she works on. So, but certainly just to put that reflection on anyway. So, but thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Mooney. Okay, members, can I assume that the amendment has been passed? Unanimous? Okay, and Councillor Duffy to sum up.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody in here for their support for the motion, and I really want to say a word of thanks to the staff in A&E for talking to us. We will be their voice in every political chamber to ensure that a fit-for-purpose emergency department is delivered for Altmegalvin. I also want to thank the patients who have shared their experiences with us, and thank them for putting their trust in us to represent them. And we will stand with them and every person in Derry, Strabane and the Northwest to demand equality of access to our healthcare system. I also want to put on record our thanks to Padraig Delargy, the MLA, who has been continuously addressing this at Assembly level. And we are adding our voices to an already existing campaign. And we have seen how our voices can assist in areas of regional balance with the airport, with the university and with the A5. But this will be a decision for the Health Minister to prioritise in the same way the Minister for Economy prioritised the airport in Magee. I do, however, also remember Minister McGimpsey saying we wouldn't get the Northwest Cancer Centre, but thank God the campaign won for the people of this area. So building a new emergency department isn't going to happen overnight, but we need to all work together to get the business case agreed and fast-tracked. So thank you, people, for your support today.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Members, presume that it is unanimous. I do not see any dissenting voices. Thank you, members. Well done, Councillor. Okay, the next motion is for Councillor Gallagher to move.
Thank you. Mayor, in light of the extraordinary events leading to the suspension of the deliberating public inquiry, this council reaffirms its opposition to industrialisation of the Sperrins area of outstanding natural beauty from gold mining. Members are seriously concerned at the failure of the Department for Infrastructure to carry out a lawful transboundary consultation with the Irish Government, which has disenfranchised citizens of this island from participating in the inquiry process and added further and unnecessary stress on the local communities seeking to protect our countryside, our environment and our health. Members support and reiterate the concerns raised by the Commissioner regarding the significant and unnecessary cost to the public purse because of the Department's negligence, including our own council, which had been represented in the public inquiry at the expense of our ratepayers. Therefore, this council will explore whether public expenditure incurred unnecessary as a result of the government's negligence can be recovered from the Department of Infrastructure. Additionally, this council will write to the Minister of Infrastructure as a matter of urgency, expressing the concerns outlined above and seeking assurance that when the inquiry reconvenes, this department will be adequately prepared and represented by the officials at a senior level. Furthermore, the Minister should also issue a public apology to the communities of the Sperrin who do not have the benefit of expertise and resources and who will be most impacted by the delays caused by the department and its failures to comply with its own environmental regulations. I move.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Leonard. Yeah, the motion has been seconded. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. It is regrettable that the long-awaited inquiry into Dalriadan's proposal for a gold mine and processing plant in the Sperrins has been suspended. The errors included the time frame of consultation with the Dublin government and direct contact being made with Donegal County Council, which was supposed to go through Dublin initially. At the inquiry, the department's legal representation argued that the inquiry should go ahead on issues that aren't relevant to the transboundary consultation, whilst the department then reconsults with Dublin and Donegal through the proper channels. However, the PSC rejected this position, stating that residents in Donegal need to be properly consulted and have the opportunity to have their say. This inquiry is not derailed, it is just delayed. The additional consultation actually gives more people the opportunity to have their say and express their views. And due to the nature of this plan application, it is important that people in Donegal are consulted on the potential environmental ramifications of the Dalriadan project, which cut right across the northwest. I encourage all communities impacted to contribute to the consultation and give their views prior to the resumption of the inquiry. It was indeed my party colleague Chris Hazard who first decided there should be a public inquiry when he was Infrastructure Minister back in 2017. The public inquiry itself has been a significant victory for the people. For many years now, the people of the Sperrins and the surrounding area have fought tooth and nail in opposition to this project, and as public representatives, they have come to us countless times to explain their concerns about the threat the project poses to public environmental health. We share those concerns and are resolutely opposed to this project. I also want to thank my colleagues in Fermanagh and Omagh District Council who pushed for this inquiry and who appointed a legal team to represent the corporate view of the council, which is that the gold mine should not go ahead. On a separate but related note, the PSC have not allowed people to access the inquiry remotely or access transcripts. This seriously restricts who can take part and follow the inquiry, and it particularly restricts people from the 26 counties. DFI have opposed this position, and I believe the council should put in a request for remote participation to PSC so the process can be as accessible and transparent as possible for the public. It will also help those who are due to attend the inquiry who can't make the new dates. I wish to propose an amendment to the motion. It is an amendment that removes the inaccurate reference about cost to ratepayers, as there has been no direct cost to this council on the public inquiry. The amendment will focus on making the important points of expressing our concerns, supporting the need to ensure residents of Donegal have the opportunity to respond and ensure concerns of local people are fully considered. I've sent that to Paula and asked if she could share it on the screen, please. Thank you.
Do you have a seconder? Yeah. Thank you, Councillor.
Mayor, Alderman Kerrigan, we have lost the
Is that
wording.
Alderman Kerrigan?
Yeah, no, we have lost the wording of the screen online, so we cannot see the amendment. I don't know if that could be put back
Yeah,
up again.
Alderman Kerrigan, we are trying to sort it out here.
No, no problem. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. Just give us a few minutes and we'll be back on.
Can you hear through that? Can you not hear? No.
Members, for the sake of those who are online, we are proposing to adjourn this meeting right now and head out to the vigil and reconvene at 4:30 p.m. So you can see the amendment there, and it will also come via email. Then we will come back and finish because of the time that we committed. Thank you, members. So see you at 4:30.